Right now, somewhere in the world, two people are sitting across from each other, a man and a woman. A normal conversation is happening, at least on the surface, but something deeper is happening at the same time. She isn't just speaking with words, she's communicating with pauses, posture, tiny unconscious shifts in her body, and expressions that appear for only a moment. The strange part is that he often doesn't notice any of it. To him, everything feels casual, friendly, ordinary. Then later, when the moment has passed, he's left replaying the conversation in his mind, wondering, where did it change? If you've ever experienced that feeling, stay with me. Because what you're about to discover isn't about guessing or reading minds. It's about learning to recognize what was already there. And no, this isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding human behavior. Long before people openly express attraction, their bodies often begin revealing it in quiet, natural ways. The truth is, many men don't miss opportunities because they don't know what to say. They miss them because they never learned how to observe what isn't being said. Attraction rarely announces itself with dramatic gestures. More often, it develops quietly through subtle behaviors that most people overlook. Research in psychology consistently shows that nonverbal communication carries a remarkable amount of emotional information. Our brains process body language automatically, often before we're consciously aware of our feelings. That means someone can unintentionally reveal comfort, curiosity, or growing attraction before they fully recognize those emotions themselves. These behaviors aren't rehearsed. They aren't secret techniques. They're simply natural responses that appear when someone feels emotionally safe and genuinely engaged. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever realized that someone was interested in you only after the opportunity had already passed? Or have you ever completely misunderstood someone's signals? Share your experience in the comments because your story may help someone else understand relationships from a new perspective. And if you're enjoying thoughtful discussions about psychology, relationships, and human behavior, remember to like this video and subscribe. It tells YouTube that these conversations matter, and it helps us reach more people who want healthier, more meaningful connections. I'm Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living YouTube channel. Today we're going to explore 4 areas of the body that often reveal attraction long before words ever do. But there's something important to remember throughout this entire conversation. None of these signals should ever be treated as proof that someone is romantically interested. Human behavior is complex. People have different personalities, different cultures, and different comfort levels. The goal isn't to assume or pressure someone. The goal is simply to become more aware, more present, and more respectful of the people around you. Let's begin with something that many people never think about: the neck. Not because of how it looks, but because of what it represents psychologically. The neck protects some of the body's most vulnerable areas. From an evolutionary perspective, exposing it requires a certain degree of comfort. That's why you may occasionally notice a woman gently tilting her head while listening to you, brushing her hair aside without thinking, or allowing one side of her neck to remain visible a little longer than usual. These actions usually aren't planned. They happen naturally when a person feels relaxed. Imagine sitting in a quiet coffee shop. 2 coworkers have been talking for months. At first, every conversation is formal. They're polite but reserved. Over time, something changes. She begins leaning her head slightly as she listens. She laughs more easily. She stops holding so much tension in her shoulders. She absent-mindedly moves her hair away from her neck while maintaining eye contact. None of these behaviors alone prove attraction, but together, they often suggest that the conversation has become emotionally comfortable. Comfort is one of the most misunderstood foundations of attraction. Many people think attraction begins with excitement or chemistry. In reality, emotional safety usually comes first. When people feel safe, their nervous system relaxes, their muscles soften, their movements become less guarded. The body stops preparing for danger and starts allowing genuine connection. You might also notice small touches around the neck. Someone adjusts a necklace repeatedly, rests their fingertips lightly against the side of their neck, or briefly massages the area without realizing it. These gestures are often unconscious self-soothing behaviors that appear during emotional engagement. They don't necessarily mean romantic interest, but they do indicate that something meaningful is happening internally. Now here's the important part that many people miss. Don't isolate one behavior and immediately create a story around it. Psychology teaches us to observe patterns, not single moments. One gesture can happen for dozens of reasons. Multiple, consistent behaviors occurring together create a much clearer picture. That naturally brings us to the second area, the wrists and hands. Hands communicate constantly. Even when people aren't speaking, their hands reveal whether they feel comfortable, anxious, open, or defensive. Think about what happens when someone feels nervous. Their arms often cross tightly, their hands disappear into pockets, their fingers become rigid. The body instinctively protects itself, but when someone begins feeling more relaxed, those protective behaviors often fade. Their palms become visible, their gestures become slower and more expressive. Sometimes they'll rest their chin on one hand, exposing the inside of the wrist without even noticing. Other times they'll casually adjust a bracelet, roll up a sleeve, or play with a watch while remaining fully engaged in the conversation. Why does this matter? Because the inner wrist is another naturally vulnerable area. Just like the neck, people tend to protect it more when they feel uncomfortable. As trust develops, that unconscious protection often decreases. Picture a dinner conversation between two people getting to know each other. During the first few minutes, both are careful with their words. Their movements are measured. Then laughter begins. Stories become more personal. Suddenly, she's using her hands more while talking. Her palms remain open. She gestures naturally instead of keeping everything close to her body. The emotional atmosphere has shifted. The body simply reflects that change. This is one reason psychologists often emphasize observing clusters of behavior instead of isolated actions. Open hands, relaxed posture, steady attention, and genuine smiles together tell a much richer story than any single movement ever could. The third area is surprisingly honest because most people never think about controlling it: the legs and feet. While people consciously manage facial expressions and words, feet often reveal where attention genuinely wants to go. If someone feels disconnected from a conversation, their feet frequently begin pointing toward the exit, another person, or whatever has captured their attention. It's almost as though the body begins leaving before the conversation actually ends. On the other hand, when someone remains emotionally invested, their feet often stay naturally oriented toward the person they're speaking with. Their knees may subtly angle in the same direction. Their lower body continues participating in the interaction even during moments of silence. There's another interesting detail. Emotional excitement creates physical energy. Sometimes that energy appears as small movements, a gentle shift from one foot to the other, slowly crossing and uncrossing the legs, or lightly bouncing a foot beneath the table. Context matters enormously here. Those same behaviors can also reflect anxiety, impatience, or simple habit. That's why observing the overall emotional picture is so important. Think back to a conversation you've had with someone who truly fascinated you. Chances are, you weren't checking your phone every 30 seconds. You weren't scanning the room constantly. Your body naturally stayed engaged because your attention stayed engaged. Human beings instinctively orient themselves toward what captures their interest. Now we arrive at what many psychologists consider one of the clearest indicators of genuine engagement: the torso. The torso contains the body's vital organs. Throughout human history, protecting this area has been essential for survival. That's why people who feel uncertain often angle their bodies slightly away, even while maintaining polite conversation. They create subtle emotional distance without realizing it. But when someone feels comfortable, their shoulders, chest, and torso often begin facing the other person more directly. They may lean in slightly while listening. They may mirror the other person's posture without realizing it. They remain physically present instead of gradually turning away. This phenomenon is closely related to something psychologists call behavioral synchrony. When two people feel connected, they frequently begin matching each other's movements naturally. One person reaches for a cup, and moments later the other does the same. One smiles, the other smiles back. One leans forward, the other unconsciously mirrors the movement. These tiny moments of synchronization often reflect growing rapport. Again, this isn't a magic formula. Friends do this. Family members do this. Romantic partners do this. The key isn't one behavior. It's the overall pattern combined with the context of the relationship. Now let's talk about the biggest mistake many men make. They become so focused on themselves that they stop paying attention to the other person completely. Their thoughts sound something like this: am I saying the right thing? Did that joke land? Should I compliment her? What if I sound awkward? What if I ruin this? The conversation becomes less about connection and more about performance. Ironically, that's exactly when genuine connection becomes harder to build. Presence is incredibly attractive because it communicates confidence without trying to prove confidence. When you're fully listening instead of mentally rehearsing your next sentence, people notice. They feel heard. They feel respected. They feel valued. Consider two different conversations. In the first, someone interrupts constantly, barely listens, and spends the entire interaction trying to impress. In the second, someone asks thoughtful questions, maintains relaxed eye contact, notices emotional shifts, and responds with genuine curiosity. Which interaction feels more meaningful? For most people, the answer is obvious. Real confidence rarely announces itself loudly. It often appears as quiet attention. One of the healthiest exercises you can practice is something psychologists call active observation. The next time you're having a conversation, challenge yourself to spend less energy planning your next response and more energy noticing the other person's emotions. Listen not only to their words, but also to their pace, facial expressions, posture, and energy. You may discover that conversations become easier because you're no longer carrying the pressure of trying to perform. Another helpful exercise is to become aware of your own body language. Are your arms constantly crossed? Do you avoid eye contact because you're nervous? Do you look around the room while someone is speaking? Sometimes improving your own nonverbal communication has a much greater impact than trying to interpret someone else's. Remember this as well. Respect always comes before interpretation. Even if you notice every positive body language signal we've discussed today, that never replaces clear communication or consent. Attraction is complex. People can enjoy your company without wanting a romantic relationship. That's perfectly okay. Emotional intelligence means respecting both interest and disinterest with equal maturity. The healthiest relationships grow slowly. They aren't built by decoding secret signals. They're built through trust, consistency, kindness, curiosity, and honest communication. Body language simply helps us become better observers, not better manipulators. When you combine everything we've discussed, a meaningful pattern begins to emerge. A relaxed neck may reflect comfort. Open hands and wrists may reflect trust. Legs and feet often reveal where attention naturally wants to stay. A fully engaged torso may suggest emotional presence. Together, these behaviors paint a picture, not of guaranteed attraction, but of growing connection. Perhaps the greatest lesson isn't about reading someone else's body language at all. It's about becoming present enough to notice life as it's happening, instead of replaying it after it's gone. The next meaningful conversation you have, slow down. Put your phone away. Listen without rushing. Observe without judging. Smile naturally. Let silence exist without immediately trying to fill it. You may be surprised how much people communicate when they don't say anything at all. Before you leave, I'd love to ask you one final question. Looking back on your own life, have you ever realized much later that someone was quietly showing interest, but you completely missed the signs? Share your story in the comments because those experiences often teach us the most. And if you found today's discussion valuable, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who enjoys understanding human psychology, and subscribe for more thoughtful conversations about relationships, emotional intelligence, and the fascinating ways people connect beyond words.